Part 2 of the Kevin Jiang story. The first one occurred about a half hour after Jiang's murder. A motorist had gotten stuck on a desolate, snow-covered railroad track outside a scrap metal yard he had accidentally driven into, he said, while looking for a nearby highway entrance. The motorist, Jingsuan Pan, was from Malden, Massachusetts. His record was clean, and he was calm with an excuse that Mills had heard before from others who got lost near that scrapyard. So he helped Pan get a tow and a nearby hotel room. At the time, Mills was unaware that there had been a murder in New Haven, but about 15 hours later, at 11 a.m. on February 7, Mills responded to another 911 call at an Arby's, where employees had found a bag containing a gun and box of .45 caliber bullets. The Arby's was right next door to the Best Western Hotel where Pan had been taken. And by then, he knew Kevin Jiang had been murdered by someone driving a dark SUV similar to Pan's. That's when he reached out to New Haven Homicide. It turned out Pan had checked into the hotel but never stayed there. And when Zaweski sent detectives to Malden, where Pan went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and lived with his parents, no one was home. Zaweski turned to his computer searching for Pan, hoping to find a connection to Jiang. "We'll use Facebook as a tool to try and get a background on an individual who they're friends with," Zaweski explained. But there seemed to be no connection with Jiang. "And so you're going down the list of names," Green says. Nothing. And then you're like, whoa. "There's our connection," Zaweski replies. That connection was Zion Perry, who was listed as a friend of Pan. She and Pan had met each other at a Christian group when Perry was an undergraduate at MIT, and although Perry was barely an acquaintance of Pan and hadn't communicated with him since she left MIT and moved to New Haven to attend Yale, the homicide detectives felt they had more than a break. They had a potential suspect who was missing from his home, and a possible motive, an obsession with Perry. It did seem like there was a secret obsession of Pan's going on behind the scenes that Kevin wasn't aware of, and that Zion wasn't aware of, Zaweski said. After all, Jiang's murder occurred just 1 week after Perry posted their engagement on Facebook, along with previous photos of them dating. Investigators believe Pan was also responsible for the .45 caliber shootings and that the shootings were part of a premeditated plan. They theorized that those shootings were done to mislead them when Jiang was eventually killed, to make them think his death had been just another random incident. "He planned it," Cunningham said. "And he knew we'd be looking at these other things." "This wasn't a random incident out there," Zaweski added. "He was targeted." Now their homicide investigation and the massive manhunt for their brilliant, tech-savvy MIT fugitive took off. U.S. Marshals joined the case and learned that Pan's family had access to millions of dollars in assets. Pan was missing, and they worried he might be trying to flee the country. The pressure was on. This became so high-profile so fast, U.S. Marshal Joe Galvan told 48 Hours. It was just heightened. The Marshals galvanized their vast resources to track down Pan. They noticed Pan's parents had withdrawn large sums of cash and that they had taken a long trip south with their son right after the murder. When the parents had been stopped in Georgia, they were in the car, but their son was gone. They said he'd simply gotten out of the car and walked away, and they didn't know where he'd gone. Investigators were skeptical. "They would go to the ends of the earth to help support and hide him," said Matthew Duffy, a supervisor of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force in Connecticut. The Marshals focused in on the parents as their way to find Pan. They knew finding him would take patience as they utilized all their surveillance techniques to track the family. Weeks went by, but eventually their patience paid off. Pan's mother finally made a mistake that would lead the Marshals straight to her son. She made a phone call from a hotel using a clerk's phone. Investigators spoke to the clerk and were able to track that call, leading them to Pan's location at a boarding house in Alabama. "They went there with a small army," Duffy said. "Around 20 guys. He just came out and said, 'I'm who you're looking for.'" At the time of his arrest, Pan had on him approximately $20,000 in cash, multiple communication devices, and his father's passport. He was charged with Jiang's murder, accepted a plea deal, and was sentenced in April 2024 to serve 35 years in prison. Pan's parents were never charged with anything. 48 Hours reached out to the Pans. but they did not respond to our request for comment. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. We like to do these stories to spread awareness.